Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So Canelo Alvarez losing to Bivol has upset old media and disheartened them so much that some of these media members are coming out of the shadows. This report that I'm about to share, guys, is really a remarkable story because it is extremely telling. So let's go ahead and get into it. So Bernardo Usana, for those of you guys who don't know him, he is the Mexican commentator on ESPN. He also works with ESPN Deportes. Now, after Terence Crawford stopped Shawn Porter, I reported on this story. Everyone on the ESPN panel, when I say everyone, I mean Max Kellerman, Andre Ward, Tim Bradley, Joe Tessitore, and Mark Kriegel. All five of them said on the panel that now Terence Crawford is pound for pound the best fighter in the world. Now, before that, they were mixed. Some would say it was Terence Crawford, some would say it was Canelo. But after Terence Crawford became the first man to stop Shawn Porter, all five of them said pound for pound the best fighter in the world is Terence Crawford. There was only one person on that panel that disagreed with them and said Canelo Alvarez is still pound for pound the best fighter in the world, and that was Bernardo Usana. Well, it turns out even after Canelo Alvarez lost, Bernardo was on ESPN Deportes and he was still saying that Canelo Alvarez is #1 the best fighter in the world. And get this, not only did the whole ESPN panel disagree with Bernardo when he said that Canelo was #1 before he lost, but it turns out Bernardo couldn't even get the Mexican commentator straight from Mexico on ESPN Deportes to agree with him that Canelo was pound for pound the best fighter in the world. They both told Bernardo that Terence Crawford is #1 and Errol Spence is #2. But the story gets way deeper than that. Let me go ahead and surmise everything. First things first, shout out to my man Gumaro Vasquez, who always sends me messages on breaking boxing news stories. He also does all of the translations for me when there are interviews like this on ESPN Deportes. And by the way, guys, when it comes to Gumaro's translation skills, he's Mexican. He's not Dominican or Cuban. So I just wanted to be clear that he's given me the accurate translation. So Bernardo was so upset that both commentators was telling him that Terence Crawford and Errol Spence are #1 and #2. He got so upset that he called Terence Crawford and Errol Spence cowards. The word coward in Spanish is cobardes. Bernardo, he said, Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, they better fight against each other next. If they don't fight against each other, they will be cowards. Now, Gumaro, he surmised the entire conversation and he translated everything. I want to read to you guys exactly what he sent to me. And I'm also going to leave the link in the description box so you guys can watch the video and you can hear it for yourself what Bernardo Usana said. Okay, so this is the translated conversation that was sent to me. I'm going to read it to you guys. Hopefully I can pronounce this guy's name right, but this is the text. It reads, okay, so David Feitelson, the tall ESPN Deportes reporter, has always been a well-known critic of Canelo, and he has been very consistent on always having Terence Crawford #1 pound for pound. Feitelson once again clarifies to Usana that Crawford continues to be undisputable #1 pound for pound, even if Crawford does not generate as much money as Canelo. And he was about to say who his #2 pound for pound was, and then Usana tried to help him by mentioning Usyk, Spence, Inoue as #2 pound for pound. Feitelson then says Spence is #2 pound for pound.
Por más de que Crawford no provoque lo que vimos hoy acá, ni tampoco genere tanto dinero como genera el Canelo. Para mí Crawford sigue siendo el mejor del mundo, seguido por
Usyk,
número
Spence.
2, no.
Naoya Inoue.
No, Errol Spence, número 2. Y Naoya Inoue yo lo pongo como 4. Te dejo el Canelo como número 3.
Yeah.
Lo dejo.
So you just heard him right there. Feitelson, he said that Crawford was #1. He was about to say Errol Spence is #2. Bernardo, he tried to coach him out of saying that, and he tried to say it's Usyk is #2. And then the guy, he said, no. #2 is Errol Spence. And then he said Canelo is #3. So let me get back to the transcript. So after the reporter said that Terence Crawford and Errol Spence are #1 and 2, that's when Usana rants that they better fight each other. There is no other fight at that division, and if we demand Canelo to fight the best, then Crawford Spence needs to fight each other. If not, they are both Cowards, cobardes. Now, I want you to watch this. Look at the reaction of the other reporters when Bernardo calls them cowards.
Y que al mundo le interesa. De no hacerse ese combate, los dos son cobardes y punto. Non cobardes y punto. Non cobardes y punto.
Man, this guy and a lot of other old media members, they're really having a hard time coming to grips with the fact that Canelo Alvarez got completely dominated and lost. Again, I should say. After Canelo Alvarez went 7 years avoiding Demetrius Andrade and Jamal Charlo at 154, at 160 pounds, and now he's avoiding David Benavidez. This man Bernardo never called Canelo Alvarez a coward. When Canelo Alvarez vacated his title, rather than fight his #1 contender Jamal Charlo at 160, Bernardo never called him a coward. When Demetrius Andrade was the champion at 154 and Canelo was his mandatory, and Demetrius Andrade said this.
Canelo, you a bitch. I'm putting it out there. No, I don't like to disrespect men that step into the ring, but then you fighting Kirtland that hasn't been in the ring since Glenn Tapia. When you have an opportunity to fight Demetrius Andrade for the WBO, damn, I thought in the sport of boxing, people want to be a champion.
And do you think Bernardo ever said if Canelo doesn't fight this man for his belt at 154, Canelo's a coward? But now, after Canelo Alvarez loses, you want to call Errol Spence and Terence Crawford a coward. We know what time it is. You know, for those of you guys who've been following my channel for a while, you have heard me say on numerous occasions, when it comes to Canelo Alvarez fans, Mexican fans that live in Mexico, they are usually real boxing fans. But unfortunately, when it comes to a lot, at least the vast majority of Mexican American fans, they are usually race fans. And Bernardo Usana, he completely exposed himself as the race fan that he is. But the Mexican commentators from Mexico that was standing right next to Bernardo, they are real boxing analysts. They are real boxing fans. You can tell that when they're talking boxing, they're talking the sweet science. They're not talking color, and that's what Bernardo was doing. You could see it. When Faitelson was saying that Terence Crawford is #1 and he was about to say Errol Spence is #2. And Bernardo, he comes out and he says Usyk. You want to say Usyk, right? You want to say Usyk is #2, and then he had a Noe in there. He was basically telling this guy, man, you need to know how to stay on code. Nobody ever taught you this? Man, you need to start paying more attention to some of these commentators out here in America so we can show you how to stay on code. I mean, and even in this photo right here, Bernardo, he has a look on his face like he's hoping his colleague doesn't say something that he feels he's not supposed to say. It's just so ironic because the only people that were corroborating everything you guys have heard me say when I was exposing Canelo for what he is, the only people that were really corroborating everything I was saying were other Mexican champions and Mexican commentators like the two standing next to Bernardo Usana right here. But when it came to the Mexican greats, people like Juan Manuel Marquez, Eric Morales, Julio Cesar Chavez. Now, sure, maybe some of them, like a Julio Cesar Chavez, altered what he said a little bit because of the backlash from the fans. But at the same time, they still corroborated everything that you guys have heard me say in the past when it comes to Canelo Alvarez. And once again, it just shows you that these Mexican champions, they are not on code when they're talking about Canelo Alvarez or any other boxer in the sport. But going back to Bernardo, see, Bernardo thought he was slick. He thought calling Errol Spence and Terence Crawford a coward, it was going to fly under the radar because he said it in Spanish on ESPN Deportes, and he felt nobody in America is going to pay attention to this. Even the people that know what I said, they're not going to put it out there. They're not going to expose me. And he was wrong. He was definitely wrong about that. And this is the reason why boxers like Terence Crawford and Errol Spence, they need to expose this man for who he is. And people on the panel, when it comes to ESPN, like Andre Ward and everyone else, they need to expose this man because we know that Bernardo, he wouldn't have called Errol Spence and Terence Crawford a coward on regular ESPN, but he does it on the Spanish network because he feels that no one is going to pay attention to it, at least not in the States. This man, Bernardo Usano, he preferred Canelo Alvarez to fight the easiest competition just so he can continue telling people that Canelo was the best. Now you want to sit over here and say Errol Spence and Terence Crawford are cowards if they don't fight against each other next? Last time I checked, Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, they have never surrendered their belt. They've never vacated their belt to avoid a very dangerous undefeated mandatory. Terence Crawford was in the exact same situation that Canelo was in when Jamal Charlo was Canelo Alvarez's mandatory. We seen what Canelo did. Like I said, he vacated. When Sean Porter was Terence Crawford's mandatory, and some people were trying to say that Terence Crawford was avoiding Sean Porter, what did Sean Porter do? He took the fight and he stopped Porter. Neither Errol Spence or Terence Crawford have ever abandoned a division just to avoid a dangerous challenge and go fight weaker opposition at a higher weight class. Neither one of them have ever done that. So at the end of the day, we know what time it is when it comes to the double standards. But anyway, I'm gonna wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. I'm on to the next one. Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man Scalp Carolinas on Instagram. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called Elo Deki Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to elodeki.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.